I've seen this. I've seen you setting up, Ken, and your iteration of this 9 years ago. And well, one thing I would like to say is that there are many. I don't know. You guess you call them slides. Each one of them is its own little world, I would say, from what I can tell. And you have written about that as well. I'm assuming, and you have many of these slides, and I assume you know them rather well, intimately.
There's always surprises.
That's what I was wondering. I mean, obviously this is largely discovery. I mean, improvisational, maybe not totally, but it's a field of discovery. I just thought maybe I'd be curious to hear you talk about that.
It's improvisation, and I can work with the same image and work infinitely. I mean, there's so many surprises that come up, and I see something, I try and go for it. I work it, try and make it happen as richly as I can, and go on. But I could really actually stay with one slide almost the entire show.
Actually, can explain me the order of the slides before the performance, 1 hour before the performance. And, each slide, he played with different details. And it's actually, the performance, it's quite different.
I have no control.
Yeah.
Would you mind if we actually just turn the lights up and just look? I mean, maybe Flo could hold up one of those slides, just so, if you don't mind, if we start revealing some. I just think they're amazing, amazing to look at. Can you bring the lights up all the way?
I thought it's top secret.
Well, it's let me see one. Hold it up.
I may well be holding up.
How much actually part of the slides you are sort of projecting? It's a
Small portion.
small portion, right?
Yeah, and also it's a circular slide, so very, very different things happen each time. And I have a lot of them and compulsively keep making more. But I could probably just stop and keep looking at these, and it'd be a new show every time.
One more thing I'd like to ask, and then is you've been performing live now. I mean, going back to the '60s, and I'm sure earlier. But in terms of what we'd call three-dimensional or at least spatial phenomenon, and the apparatus has changed over the years, and obviously the worlds of the kind of space plays have also changed. And I was very curious, but I'm fascinated how each one is, the nervous system was a very different kind of spatial experience than this. And as you invent and discover each one, I guess in a way it's a question is, how do you make that discovery? Or at least, as I say, when you're making that discovery, each one is its own little kind of, as I say, world, but obviously ones of which you had never suspected and saw before. So it's like a major discovery, and so each one is like a different form of spatial play, not really like any 3D that we would normally think of as 3D, right? But they're their own worlds, I guess, and so I just wonder, how it is for you to move from one to the next.
Impulse, dream. For this thing, I actually had a dream in which I saw this phenomenon, and I was working on an apparatus, and I realized it connected to that apparatus, and then I began to concentrate really on it. The nervous system dealt with film. We always had the same film, but we were showing two frames of that film, boom, 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 and all kinds of bizarre spatial things were happening. This is no film, no movies. The things the slides, so-called slides, are usually very quickly made. Okay, it's really like that, really fast. Because then I have I'm going for the most texture, the most unpredictable accident. And then I examine the accidents in performance.
Yeah, actually you are studying painting.
I studied painting.
Before studying film, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of an extension of your earlier idea, in a sense.
I always felt guilty because I had studied painting and then veered off into film, and now I feel justified.
Yeah, so it's like you're going back to the roots. However, it's a moving image.
Yeah.
So it's a difference,
Yeah.
quite obvious.
I've resolved it.
I just have one question for Aki, which is that you've accompanied many, from what I know, many visual artists and also moving image artists. And I know that Ken's work is very different, very unique. And so, well, this is about the 7th time you'd mentioned to me, or so that this is about the 7th time or 8th time that you've worked together. So
could be a bit more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, over 10 years, over the last 10 years.
So we just heard another world of sound tonight, and how do you approach working with Ken differently?
At the beginning, actually, I started watching experimental film back in the end of 90s, and I spent so much time at the Anthology Film Archives in New York, and I happened to find Ken's work, and I was just fascinated. So then, year 2007, Ken was doing retrospective at a festival in Belgium, and I was invited to do my project in the same festival. So the curator suggested work together. So that was the beginning. Then Ken's request was only one request: use sound of life. So, but my practice, I've been collecting any kind of sound by using cassette Walkman since the end of 80s. So I had thousands of cassettes. So it was for me it was quite easy order. Then I really wanted to match my sound with Ken's visual, which is 3D, or I would say 2.5D.
No. 3D.
And he insists 3D. So there's strange kind of depths. And I was always interested in sort of environmental sound. Any kind of sound exists in three-dimensional space. So I wanted to create same kind of depths by sounds. So even today, so I've been using mostly cassettes, but sound system is surround system, and it's not real 3D, but I'm making sort of fake surround sound system. So in a sense, I try to, in a sense, match with his image with sound. And that's interesting because why? How come I forgot? Why you ask me to use sound of life?
What do I ask you to?
Yeah, sound of life.
I like the music of the world, of things that happen.
And this is 100% abstract images.
Yeah.
But however,
But I like it to be rooted in some way to life going on.
Yeah, but I've been actually seeing this image for the last 10 years, and each time this gives me some kind of image, like Rorschach test. You know, I don't know how you felt, but I often find some kind of, it's abstract image, but some kind of concrete image in it. And it appears and disappears all the time.
Yeah.
So you must mention, you know, it's in your brain.
Yeah.
Somehow this kind of image have really kind of that kind of strange effect. It's like almost like a taking drug.
Okay, I do think about things that happen, and I try to understand, I try to analyze events, but in the work, it's impulse.
Probably a brain scientist can probably, you know, explain exactly more, but you're an artist.
I become taken with things and go with it.
So there's some kind of mystery. You don't understand 100%.
Yes, mystery, yes. And keep it that way, you know?
Time. Why an hour? I mean, I think I could have sat for another hour, or I could only have sat for half an hour. I didn't have a sense when I was looking at, I could hear you changing behind me, the slides, but I didn't have a sense of why the beginning, why the end, and why 60 minutes for the whole, or just talk about time, how you look at, do you look at it improvisationally and each time decide when to end? Does that make sense, the question?
Could you,
Yeah, she's asking about why an hour, and how did you...
why an hour?
Well, in this particular case, it could have been a half an hour, it could have been 2 hours. And how do you determine that?
A concern for human endurance.
But actually we had you know, 90-minute show sometimes.
Yeah.
So it could be longer.
He has a lot more slides, I think.
Actually, no. Actually, it could be less, even less.
I'm sure, if anything, hours in one slide, possibly. So, well...
I work a lot at home, and then it just goes on into the night. I'm seized by it, and it's not much different from what happens over here, but I stay with it, much longer. But for people who haven't seen it, I think an hour is enough. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's not just an issue of the amount of time, but I'm sure when you're watching it over time, and for hours, you could just get absorbed in extremely subtle changes.
Yeah. Before Aki, I worked a lot with John Zorn, and then one day he makes music that sounded religious, and we haven't worked since then.
Religious? Okay.
You spoke about previously using 2 projectors in order to achieve a sort of 3D effect. Here, there are not exactly 2 projectors. Do you mind speaking about how the sort of right eye, left eye effect is achieved if there aren't 2 projectors, so to speak?
Okay, I'm not sure I really heard that well.
Well, the gentleman was asking about how you achieve a sense of space when you're not using 2 projectors.
I don't know. The thing makes no sense. So it isn't like something I can figure out. I have to putter. I have to try it. And then I see these results. Good, I stay with it. With the nervous system, that was actually going back and forth between 2 images. And because it was two different frames of a film, and there was movement between frames. In some cases, it was akin to having two perspectives, two eyes, and seeing depth that way. But this depth, the depth that we were achieving, was very often crazy depth. Okay, there's something I spoke about in my talk, which was, it's called how do you say it? Pseudoscopy? Yeah, say it.
Pseudostereoscopy.
Very good. Which is when the left eye sees the right eye image and the right eye sees the left eye image. And I wrote that my theory is that Cubism came from that. Because these spaces are so strange, and the spaces that were recreated by Picasso and Braque look like that. And these guys would never say they picked it up from the common stereoscope, which was everywhere. It used to be, people were looking through stereo left-right pictures all the time. It's like something that developed about 10 years after the invention of photography. It came very, very, very fast. There was an understanding that two eyes were making this incredible thing happen. Two eyes were seeing flat pictures, and the brain was making them into three-dimensional. So with the nervous system, this was making two perspectives work against each other and producing artificially, by machinery, normally what the brain would do, making this stereo event take place, but a crazy stereo.
It was based on photographs. It was based already on...
Yeah, on films.
On film, yeah,
Two strands of film, but different, close but different frames.
Questions or thoughts?
Oh, we can go home.
No, not yet. Yeah, I know.
Thank you, wonderful audience.
I'm wondering how much your mood and what's going on in the world and your awareness of it and your emotions about that affect the tone of the performance.
This is escape. This is absolute escape. Things come into some of the works where I comment, but I don't feel like I do anything effective. Well, who can be effective? We're being run over, The title of this work says what I believe is happening, that the very rich just don't need all these workers anymore, and they probably are really out to get rid of us. Which was a story of the 1927 German film Metropolis. Kavanaugh? This jerk is on the Supreme Court. He's really a wretch. And I think that we're in a terrible time, that the 60s were a violent time, and I suspect Kavanaugh and the idiot will precipitate a similar kind of violence. Is that okay? But the work, it was escape. The work, I complain around the margin of the work, but I can't complain within the work.
We did that in Seeking the Monkey King, though.
Oh yes, Seeking the Monkey King is something you can see online. I think at Vimeo Ken Jacobs. And that's like a 27-minute film, 28 minutes, and that's true. That film allowed me somehow to be explicit from the very beginning. But one has no control of that. Some of the works allow that. Star Spangled to Death is probably my best film. and it really, it's made by a much younger Ken Jacobs, and it sounds like 7 hours of grueling art. It's an extremely interesting movie. If you watch it, it's no one has any trouble staying with it, and it deals with American history. Fucked up.
I'm not understanding how I see what I see. I imagine I see certain objects moving and they change, and the music alters the emotion of what you see, and yet I've never seen a slide. The slide is a circular...
Yeah, so sometimes I move it during...
So you're holding the slide in front of the light,
light,
which is then the fans at the front.
It's so simple. It's a light, you know, a small theater light.
Okay.
750 watt lamp, it can light the screen.
But when you say your slide, the slide has different images on it, which you've created.
But the images are, you know, playing with paint. I mean, a child could do what I do with the paint, you know.
And then you're just moving.
And then I have this transparent plastic. The paint goes on that, and where there's no paint, you have white on a screen. Light comes through.
Okay. And the sound, you go with the emotion of what you see he creates, and you make the sound to fit the moment.
It is sort of structured, but you know, image, as he said, is a bit out of control. So, in a sense, you know, I can go different ways. You know, I have a structure. However, if something changes, I can easily change. So, I'm preparing different kind of stories. Then I don't know, you know, where we can go.
He tends to be orderly.
But you know, it's a game, so I don't need to worry anything. In a sense, you know, I just need to follow the flow.
Would you say that tonight's performance was more, I won't say subdued, but more monochromatic? I mean, you have certainly slides where relatively speaking,
No, I haven't wanted.
awash with color.
I haven't wanted to look at color. I really, I love black and white. I love the austerity of it, and the fact that it makes you consider form more. And one of the great things of having a TV set is being able to put off the color and watch a movie in black and white. I think color breaks up the image, breaks it up into fragments, and that rarely does a color film achieve the kind of form that one had in a black and white film. Black and white is a wonder.
Okay, so speaking of form, I just had this thought while I was watching. You mentioned projection in your talk yesterday, projection being central to the history of abstract painting. But I was watching this and I was thinking magnification is actually like central to the cinematic condition. I hadn't really thought of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just...
I mentioned that Franz Klein, whose paintings I love, he would do small sketches and then select areas for magnification and then copy them as large paintings. A lot of people disapprove. I think he did very well. Franz Klein, great painter.
Yeah, I'm just remembering that when you performed this here some years ago, performed under this magic lantern, the late great Ray Zone made a comment that what you're doing is to create a perfect storm of non-stereoscopic 3D cubes. And I thought that phrase stuck with me as a great description of what happened.
Steve, what did I mean to say, please? I really couldn't quite hear.
David, can you say it again? I want to paraphrase that.
Ray Zone's comment was that what you're doing in the Nervous Magic Lantern is to create a perfect storm of non-stereoscopic 3D cubes.
Of non-stereoscopic?
Yeah, not 2I, but all kinds of other, light, shape, movement, whatever.
This is depth that one eye can see.
Yeah.
Gift.
Oh yeah, I was just curious about the shutter speed, and if you I was curious about the shutter speed, and if you always keep the same shutter speed, because I ended up accidentally, intuitively blinking at different speeds, and like what that did to the image was really cool. So I was just curious about that.
Can't hear you.
Oh. I was just curious about the speed. Yeah, like
it's 60 cycle, steady 60 cycle motor.
Okay.
That's the speed that works, at least for me.
Okay. And you always use that consistently
I do.
with all the shows?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever worked with like a adjustable speed? No?
This is it.
Okay.
For some reason, at this speed, it works.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
But that's why I've been this time. When I work with Ken, I use different tempo, and I consciously take some kind of rhythmic approach. Mm-hmm. This is 60 cycle.
Yeah.
Your slides. I'm hearing that sound. Then I, in a sense, try to use different polyrhythmic patterns. Yeah. And actually, sense of time really changes. Actually,
I like it. Yeah.
So it's quite musical in a sense to me. In a sense, this kind of there's the same tempo, 60 cycle.
Yeah.
But I can use it as a sort of music element.
The tempo of the propeller is always the same, but the kind of action that will take place, if elements are closer together or further apart, I think the time of the action is different from the turning of the shutter. I think it varies.
And it's kind of really analog. It's not really like a digital.
Yeah.
So it's a 16 cycle, yes, but it's random. Sometimes it became not exactly the same.
I think it has to do with the image.
Yeah.
It's psychological.
Yeah.
Physical is the same.
Yeah.
Someone had their hand up?
How does the performance being so ephemeral, how's your relationship with that, with the ephemeral nature of the performance, and that there's so many iterations?
Sorry, can you stand or speak even louder?
Sure.
Bring her the microphone.
Yeah.
I won't reach, but
I was saying how you've had so many iterations of this performance, and what your relationship with that is, in that no performance can be reproduced, and once it's over, no matter how it's documented, the people who are in the room and you experiencing it can never be reproduced, and someone watching it on the screen or hearing about it later will never experience the Nervous Magic Lantern as it was performed in that moment.
when you record it on video, you get it. It does record. And this was recorded tonight. It will exist. You will see it for hundreds of years.
But there's also something to be said that it's a performance. It is ephemeral.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like being in the room and like the pauses in between you changing slides, and like I think that the anticipation of like not knowing if another slide is going to come up, if the music is going to resume. I think that that's something that is like one of the aspects of the performance that makes it something you want to experience in person with you here, changing the slides for us.
The ephemeral. The ephemeral is life itself. I'm sure in a film where people rehearse, the actual shot that's kept in a serious film is when a gesture is made that's ephemeral. The actor rehearses and rehearses, and then makes a gesture out of nowhere, and that's the one that's valuable. You know, the ephemeral. We are ephemeral. Thank you very much.
Does Flo have her hand up?
No.
It's not going to be easy.
I think
Speak loud.
I think Rorschach is central in the work.
Rorschach.
Rorschach.
Yeah, well, Aki mentioned that word.
I think a lot of that happens. I think a lot of Rorschaching happens. A lot of it happens on levels that we can't. We have no time, but words. We have no way or time to find words to interpret these Rorschach understandings. But I'm sure they happen. They do happen.
All right, we have one or two more. Anyone else? Anyone else? What do you say?
Would you like to talk a little about the video work? The video work.
First piece today.
Yeah.
Oh, I work with our daughter, and I sit alongside of her and watch her do these things with the computer. She's pretty amazing. So, but the idea, you want to know how it comes, okay. We have a fountain near us, a fountain, and these are shots of the fountain. These are all drops of water suspended in the air, suspended on the video, frame, and they get their movement from this system I've devised called, terrible word now, the eternalism, because you get action, you get direction of movement, and yet things linger. They linger forever. They keep going in the same direction as long as you want. Eternalism. And if you go to, again, Vimeo Ken Jacobs or Vimeo Ken Jacobs Gallery, you'll see many of them. Now, I'm going to tell you a secret, okay? Secret. Oh, the camera's up there. Okay, I have a stereo camera with me all the time. Fuji W3, a wonderful stereo camera that's no longer being produced. And I'm taking stereo shots and stereo movies day in and day out. So I'm very hard to get along with because I'm always stopping and taking pictures. Okay, so this is really a secret recipe. The eternalism is made from a left and right picture, shown sequentially. So it's you can do this yourself now. You know, left picture, a combination of left and right picture, right picture. It's just showing one after the other. And then, what I've been doing lately is showing the same three pictures in their negative colors. So it's 3 positive, 3 negative, 3 positive, 3 negative, and you get this floating, endless thing happening. How it works, I can't explain. I wish I could attract a scientist that would figure this out. I have to just putter, and I'm an artist, so I enjoy doing it. I enjoy evoking these states of mind, but I wish I could understand what I'm doing.
So the gallery is available. It's on Vimeo, right? Your gallery that has your gallery that has the eternalisms is on Vimeo, right? And these they can on a cell phone actually as well, but on any device they come to life. They really do have an amazing power and sense of depth, a particular kind.
Yes,
depth. Yeah.
So the depth remains from the stereo pictures, and one eye can see it. Well, both eyes are getting all the information. Either eye can see a stereo image. I think actually a single eye is better than 2 eyes for seeing these things, because 2 eyes are seeing that this is an exceptional space around a 3-dimensional world. I think when only one eye is picking up the image, it's even a stronger 3D event.
Can you address this? I thought quite beautifully and profoundly in your talk, your lecture at LACMA. So to sum it up briefly is asking a lot, but if you could just say a few words about depth, because it's so central to your life, our life, but I mean as an artist, and well, nobody's quite focused on this over the course of a lifetime the way you have.
As I explained in the thing I read, I studied painting with Hans Hofmann. One of the great painters and teachers. He didn't make himself very clear. He spoke a bad English coming from Germany in 1930, and he could never really expound, but he would say things that would set you off. He would say things in class that just made you crazy. And one of the things I wrote about in the article is one day he's in the class and I hear him laughing, and he says, "People think Mondrian is flat." Ha ha ha. What? So he could precipitate you into these endless studies. So I came out of his classes very, very depth conscious, and over the years I found ways to pursue it. It's an appetite. He was bewildering, but stimulating.
When you're walking down the street and you're taking pictures, and you're thinking and seeing, obviously you're seeing in depth, but you're aware of that, and how that can somehow be transformed.
Well, you get a reputation as a dawdler.
We have anybody else want to say anything before we end this evening? Last comment? Well, thank you both. Thank you, Ken Jacobs.